Rafael Gonzalez, absolutely fascinating podcast. Fits
On
right.
exosomes.
Exosomes, secretomes, stem cells, FDA, a lot of different questions coming up, all basically in the anti-aging sphere. I use that term a little bit because it's more at this point skin-based, although it's not far away from being full body. It sort of depends on safety studies with the FDA and so on. So we've been able to use this technology in our practice to our patients' benefit, and we needed to have him on today to just take it down to the bare roots of what the science is. And yeah, we did get a little too scientific at one
Nerdy.
point. Nerdy. He's not nerdy.
No, you guys were great. And it's just another, one of our deeper dive investigations into this thing called regenerative medicine.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep. Perfectly put. You said it much quicker than I did. Good for you.
Enjoy the episode.
But what do I know? I'm just a vagina doctor. Rafael Gonzalez, welcome to the Vagina Doctor podcast. It's really great to have you join us today.
Pleasure to have me. Thank you very much for having me, actually, and look forward to diving in and talking about vaginal health and regenerative medicine, exosomes, stem cells, all the above. Great,
fantastic. I'm going to read some of your bio just for accuracy and so that I don't miss anything. You obtained your BS and your PhD from the University of California at Irvine. Your thesis was Interactions of the Immune System Following Spinal Cord Injury. In addition to expertise in degenerative disorders, you have extensive experience in stem cell culture and biology. You've helped develop various therapies in the context of immune health. With extensive knowledge in all aspects of cell biology, health, regenerative medicine, and maintaining immune health, which is the key to longevity, you have led multiple investigational new drug applications with patented stem cell technology, working on the clinical development of immune-based therapies with natural killer cells in the context of longevity. You've been in the regenerative medicine sector for more than 20 years and obviously well published. You also teach worldwide at the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine on age-related disorders, the role of the immune system and cell therapeutics to aid in maintaining health and nutrition for longevity. Your present focus has been maintaining a healthy immune system and ways to slow down the biological clock, both inside and out. You have several patents in the cell therapeutics-based field and have worked extensively on secretome, exosome stem cell products for skin health. And recently, at your lab BioBox, you have developed a regenerative medicine topical that's disrupted the cosmetic rejuvenation space, Exo, and that's how I know you. Nice to meet you face to face.
Nice to meet you too.
So when we asked prior to the program to give us an idea of how somebody would describe you, and the result was passionate about helping others medically and always here to help. And I have certainly found that. So thank you for taking my phone calls and my rather basic questions and the knowledge. I went to medicals 50 years ago. So, things have changed. We know a lot more now. But have you always been pushing the envelope here, always been right at the front of things?
I would say so, because I've always, I garnered a passion for all of this back in 1990 when I had a spine injury myself.
Okay.
And what I noticed was, what is causing the pain? What is causing the issue? This needs to be solved. And if you think of essentially pain, all diseases we now know have an immune component to it. And then actually that's when because I was in the military, I returned and went back to school to get my PhD, fell in love with what I love to do, which is research and focusing more on the side of from bench to bedside. How do we get things that are applicable to the human condition presently and treat them. And lastly, the most important thing is taking a proactive approach versus the way the system is set up now as being completely reactive.
Okay, it's go back to your. Where were you in the armed forces? What department were you in?
I was in the Army. And I was what they call was a demolition specialist.
Okay.
This is prior to school. Yes, this is, I mean, through 1983 to 86. So this is a long time ago, really long time ago. And it's sort of where I garnered health, nutrition. I always talk about nutrition so much because unfortunately we're being polluted nowadays with really bad food
Yeah.
out there. It's really, really bad. And and physical exercise, because the two things in life that we have full control over are what you
Yeah.
put in your mouth and what you can do.
Right. I mean, you're really clearly thinking in the longevity way, because I mean, it seems like everything has come down to, as you say, diet and exercise and what we do, but really looking at things proactively as just before they create any problems. And it seems to me that the normal or the regular way that our society is able to get into the medical field, or at least go to see a provider, is when they start having symptoms, and not before that. And a general medical exam done prior to that with somebody who had having symptoms is really rather superficial. And so, I'm really encouraged by what I've personally seen in the investigations going on in the in a microbiology aspect, looking at the ways we can diagnose things much more easily or much quicker. So we're speaking the same language. It's just, but a lot of the medical profession are not doing this, and that frankly is frustrating. To me, it must be very frustrating to you too.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's I mean, I'm focused on looking at things at the cellular level, because the crazy thing is, the crazy truth is, you have 320 billion cells that turn over on a daily basis.
Wow.
It's a big number.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're composed of trillions and trillions of cells, and people don't understand, besides the cells, that extracellular matrix, that 3D we live in, which is composed of the number one abundant protein in your body is collagen. There's nothing more important than collagen. Secondarily to that, it's not a protein, it's a proteoglycan, is hyaluronic acid. These are key factors, believe it or not, even in longevity. When we talk about superficially our skin, and then when we talk about internally, anything from cell signaling, they all require this extracellular matrix to be proper and doing well.
Oh, wait, I want to say something.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm here as the listener, like anyone listening to this podcast. So I'm going to ask questions based on what they may be thinking when they're listening. So I just want our listeners to know that specifically we are here today to talk about exosomes. And that is your relationship with us and our office. And I'm so excited to let our listeners know more about exosomes. It's questions we get asked every day on the phone, people in the office, people getting treatment. What is an exosome? And then I also want to talk about all the confusion when we go to conferences, medical conferences, with the panel sitting up there saying, oh, no, no, no. You know what I mean? When all the providers are actually using exosomes. So,
where we left off a little bit ago in the question was, the extracellular matrix part is important in signaling. And the reason why I went there right away is because, we're going to talk about signals. And every single cell in your body has this thing called an exosome. Every cell, not only stem cells, which are the better exosomes, but every cell in the body. And it's a form of communication. It's a bioactive molecule. It's a nanoparticle. It's a protected particle. It's just like a mini cell. It has the same lipid bilayer
Mm-hmm.
that a cell transpires. And the purpose of it is to be able to communicate from one cell to another cell. Think of as simple as this. You have a fever. You have a fever, and what does the body want to do? It wants to
Yeah.
regulate temperature. There has to be a signal from one area
Mm.
to another area to help the entire body work cohesively to put you in balance, which is homeostasis. These are exosomes at work, whether it's from, believe it or not, skin cell, whether it's from a stem cell, whether it's from a epithelium, it's endothelium, the vasculature, all of it have exosomes. The exosomes that we focus on are from a regenerative source that helps rejuvenate the skin. So these are from a particular stem cell that we grow up that are in clinical studies here in the United States.
Why so much controversy then? If it's something we already have, we already produce.
Because if you think of, the FDA, it's not necessarily the controversies. Number one is the FDA requires controlled studies when you look at a functional change. So meaning something that causes a functional change or a change at the cellular level, they normally want clinical studies, in the context of stem cells, in the context of exosomes. That's why exosomes, you can use them topically, like it's a cosmetic, and you basically stick with that. They're going to help clear skin. They're going to help make the skin look more vibrant, help rejuvenate. It's more of an appearance thing. But the controversy comes with when you produce these, you're sort of doing, it's a biomanufacturing. And when you do a biomanufacturing, there's a risk of infection, of bacteria growth, of all of this. So first and foremost, and I mean everybody knows this, you have to look at safety. If you
Yeah.
have an established safety profile, then it's perfectly fine. So it's got to be number one, safety. And number two is you guys see this in the practices, everybody's completely different. On any given day, let's say 95% of your patients do phenomenal with an exosome. There's still going to be that one or less than 1% that might have a reaction. They have a sensitive skin, or they have a reaction to a particular bioprotein or specific amino acid. For
Mm-hmm.
instance, ours is an amino acid solution that are not going to react the same. So ultimately, it's a safety thing more than anything else before it even becomes an efficacy. And then they want to show you got to show some efficacy.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, especially with Duncan's patients, the vaginal rejuvenation patients, that after he does procedures, he started adding the exosomes in. And now patients that have had the exosomes won't do another treatment without having the exosomes because the difference in their healing process it's just night and day.
Complete night and day. And we've seen this following microneedling, radiofrequency, CO2 fractured laser, all these procedures that they have on skin. It actually, I mean, the healing is crazy quick, versus sometimes you're out of commission 3 to 7 days, you look really bad. Within 24 to 48 hours, you can go outside and nobody can notice you had a procedure done. It's crazy. And in vaginal health, um, one of our common colleagues has run a study. We've seen that it helps, lower pH, which is what you want, because pH actually increases as we age. This is what causes basically UTIs a lot of times. And there's many other sexual dysfunction as we age that transpires. And the product that we have is specifically made for, skin health, topical health. It contains a naturally occurring antimicrobial, which is LL37. It's a particular peptide that serves as an antimicrobial. It's actually something that helps create balanced pH. It
How,
actually has something in there that helps control smooth muscle. So all of it, in the context of the vagina, leads to quicker rejuvenation. I would think plumpness. I haven't seen this myself, but I would assume based on what the product contains, what we've made, it should help significantly with that.
so your colleague you said that's doing the study, um, or if he's using it in the vagina for uh, urinary tract infection or things.
For for actually, believe it or not, it's for pre, and postmenopausal women.
Okay, how is he using that? How is he
Right now, we're studying something that we've been formulating for quite a while now in the context of a capsule. It's an insertable capsule that dissolves, and it contains specific ingredients specifically for that to increase moisture, so stop dryness, stop pain during intercourse, and then lower pH
Wow. And then is that
to where it should
available
be.
yet or no?
We're not there yet, but I can get you guys some samples that you can try. We're not quite there yet. We want to make sure that we have a good amount of efficacy together prior to selling this product.
That's great.
Make sure that we go out to a lot of women and make sure there's no issue. It actually makes 100% sense to atomize it. We actually now even sell a small atomizing device. It's really inexpensive and it's actually really nice. And it sprays a fine mist. And the purpose behind it is that so you don't waste a lot of it. It's not cheap. The product's not cheap. And it's got a long nozzle, and you can adjust this little nozzle on the end of it that atomizes it. It dries it a lot quicker versus just like using a syringe and dabbing it on, where you're using too much product. It might be too much liquid. It's an easier approach to actually just atomize it. You can use the atomizer tips that you put on a syringe and just sort of, squirt in there. And those are fantastic too because it gives a fine mist.
Don't we have those? We have a spray.
Yeah, it's not really quite as fine as that.
Okay.
It's the little syringe that we have that it just shoots out a long way, and as it does like anything that came out of a gun, it would just sort of be like a shotgun. It would expanding, and so it reaches a greater surface area.
The spray bottle one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to get you one of the devices we have.
Great.
They're fantastic, and people look at them and they're really really nice looking too.
Yeah. It's, the staff, Jillian and Megan, have
Yes.
been incredibly helpful. Just really good to work with and so efficient. You should be proud of them. So
Awesome.
it's
Thank
nice
you.
to see the forces expanding there, so to speak. I've really thought about when I've thought about platelet-rich plasma in the past and how did we get into this in terms of medicine? Well, I would say that the vets were first, but I don't mean veterans. I mean veterinarians.
Correct.
Because maybe there's more money in horse racing than there was in the human body. And so that they were using platelet-rich plasma for injuries in horses before we got it into it's not even in the full spectrum of medicine now, but before it got into medical fields. And then it seemed like it was picked up by the orthopedic specialists and gradually came in dermatologists and so on. And now into the sexual health field or menopausal health field, which is, incredibly vast. I'm really sort of glad that it was a good thing for these things to be gradually adopted. But I think our population now thinks of stem cells as being the answer to everything, and so can you go through the difference between stem cells, exosomes, secretomes?
Oh, yes. Is it secretomes?
Secretome.
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 Yeah, secretome I'm hearing a lot about just suddenly. Like suddenly it comes
Yeah.
into play on my Instagram or I see something about it in an e-blast from somebody. So yeah, what is a secretome? What is an exosome? What's the difference between an exosome and a secretome and PRF and all the different things?
Sure.
We've got a few hours, Rafael.
Yeah.
No worries. We got time. It's a pretty simple explanation. So the cells in our body, like I told you, they communicate mostly through exosomes. And when you talk about, the exosome is this basically lipid bilayer nanoparticle that can travel long distance. But no matter what, the cell also has a secondary mechanism of secreting things out. So it can secrete an extracellular matrix, collagen and HA and elastin. And that's the building blocks of the 3D of we somewhat live in. And this is secreted out of the cells. For instance, when there's a neighboring cell a lot of times there's really not, a cell that's attached to another cell. Because just like we love to be closer to people, cells love to be closer to each other, attached to each other, and communicate directly. And then a lot of times these are actually just something that's secreted out, hence the term secretome. So when you look at the context of a secretome, it's, we grow up cells. A simple example is we grow up cells in these petri dishes. It's a simple way to say it. It's a petri dish, and you grow up a cell, and then you feed the cell. And when you feed the cell then has to communicate with its partners to grow, to proliferate, so everybody's happy and everybody's living cohesively. That requires that it releases a secretome. Okay, now within that secretome, there are exosomes. Any of the products that are out there now, none of them, including ours, are a pure exosome-based product. Because for you to capture only those exosomes, you have to bind them based on a couple different proteins that we now know are available. And it lowers your repertoire significantly of how many exosomes you actually can get, because there's still a lot of unknown exosomes. But if you think about this, there's many factors in that secretome that are very beneficial. Our chief medical officer is actually the godfather of the secretome, dating back from 1999, Dr. Keith March. He's our chief medical officer, and he's got the most amount of publications, most amount of speaking on it, studies on it. It's pretty neat because it has a combo of everything you need: the exosome, plus the extracellular matrix, plus other factors that are not captured within that bioactive molecule, the exosome. So that's a difference between a secretome and an exosome.
And how
Now,
are secretomes being used right now or marketed?
same exact way. Being the secretomes more than anything else, topically, there's now applications, for instance, in the context of it, it makes sense. Organ transplants, before they would have just a solution that they would put it in a preservative solution. Now, they're talking about taking organ from one place to another in a secretome-based fluid, because it's a lot more rich, like if it's actually in its natural state in the body. So that's one other method. There's other studies now, happening in the context of stroke. But all of those type of studies are making functional changes. Remember, making a functional change at the cellular level. When you treat disease, then you have to go through phase 1, 2, 3, and then you apply for, if you're lucky enough and you're $100 million or $75 million into it, whatever it may be, it depends on what it is. Then you apply for a biological license agreement, get it approved, and then it gets approved. That's when you go traditional route. The cosmetic route is basically, which is now changing, the rules and regulations on cosmetics. There's a new regulation out there that's going to, I think it's official in mid-2025, MOCRA, where everything has to be produced in a current good manufacturing practices manner. Everything, absolutely everything, which is great. It's great for the industry to make sure that there's not a bunch of issues, any of this kind of thing. So it's going to be regulated like everything else, but at
who's
some juncture, as
regulating
you
it?
guys know, when you regulate too much, it makes it hard.
Yeah, but who is regulating that? Who's
The FDA.
and so
The
they're
FDA is
going
getting
around
involved now.
to all the labs and all the are they how
So
that's a big
it,
job.
it's a massive job, because if you look at there's a lot of, bad players out there. There's a lot of bad things that transpire with different products. It's too many people out there to actually have to go after or inspect all the different labs, all the different locations, all the different products. Normally what transpires is somebody sends a complaint in, or somebody has a reaction, or it happens a couple too many times. Then, of course, the FDA is notified. Then the FDA goes inspect and find out what's going on.
Will this new rule prevent maybe new people opening and having exosomes more, or
No, not if they do it correctly. I mean, ultimately, it boils down to, a CGMP system is, believe it or not, it's hard and it's really expensive to produce. You have regulatory staff. You got to pay a bunch of staff. You have to set up a regulated environment. You got to have some form of a lab. The stuff has to be processed under specific specifications, clean areas. You have to do some microbial testing. It requires, it's not as hard and stringent as drug manufacturing in the cosmetic sector, but it still adds specific steps to help with the safety aspect of all of it.
Okay. Are we allowed to talk about injecting or no? Is that no, we're not allowed to talk about that. Okay.
Anything that's injectable is considered I mean, you guys know, a drug.
Yeah.
Yeah. What going back to stem cells, when the general population thinks they, as I say, they'll solve every problem medically, the exosomes are coming from the stem cells, the ones that you are providing. What's the difference between the two?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
It's a great question. So the stem cell is a cell that can change into other cell types, and it's the one that releases specific exosomes to help heal the system. What normally transpires with a stem cell, for instance, is we have clinical studies, we can talk about those in autoimmune diseases. We know you put cells in an IV bag, you'll sit there and you will get an IV of these cells. And number one is you have to consider is when you sit down there and you're getting an IV of cells, it's a vein, and the first right is the lung. So it'll stop in the lung. And this is what we know so far. Everybody thinks that you put stem cells into a body and it's going to form new tissue and it's going to regenerate. And that is not what transpires with the stem cells that everybody's using now. What actually happens is the lungs, first right is the lungs. They stop in the lungs. And at that juncture, if you think about it, these are cells that were put into the perfect diet, and they were growing optimally, and they were doing fantastic. Now they're in the lungs, and they're residing in the lungs because they're too large to go through the vasculature, the entire system, and they have a hard time doing what's called extravasation. Extravasation is when cells smash, they go through the capillaries, and they go to tissue, or they go through the circulation. And very few of them do so. Most of them just reside in the lungs. But when they're residing in the lungs, this is now when the cell in that area says, what is going on in this body? I'm not happy. I need to make something to make me happy. And the stem cell becomes a machine of producing an exosome to try to help the neighboring cells and to try to heal that area so it can survive. Because every cell in your body strives to survive. They all do that. They don't want to die. They want to strive to survive. At some point, because the environment, especially the lungs, is so harsh, and especially if you're talking about somebody that's inflamed, somebody that has whatever disease, an autoimmune disease, the immune system is going to be trying to attack it, kill it off. It's going to secrete out these growth, regeneration signals, all of that. Once it's done that, this forces your own system, your own cells to make a change, to accept those signals, to make a change, and then to regenerate any tissue or anything that's actually needed. Secondarily to that, within the lungs, you have a particular immune cell. It's called a macrophage. That macrophage that's inside the lung is normally a pro-inflammatory cell that when an infection goes into the lung, what does it do? It's the number one responder to gobble, gobble, gobble. Macrophage means eat, gobble, and remove, and get it out of there. This is a pro-inflammatory one. In the context of when the stem cell starts to die, it'll actually pick it up to remove it, but it changes its physical feature and its genotype feature to an anti-inflammatory healing macrophage, which now secretes out more exosomes to regenerate the system. That's the way a stem cell works. So if you think of a stem cell versus an exosome, think of a stem cell. I look at the stem cell as, let's just say, a Tylenol or something for a headache that can gear and can change, because some days you take a Tylenol, you have a headache doesn't go away. This is that supercharged Tylenol or supercharged ibuprofen that you took that removes it. Versus the exosomes, when we make them in Petri dishes, these are pre-made. So they can only target one thing. The cell has to change based on its environment and has to make changes when it's inside the body based on the environment to survive. The other thing is a simple example is I can grow cells, and many cells, especially stem cells, I can put specific factors in there and I can force them to basically release any proteins and growth factors that I want. So it's a difference. I can make a change with the stem cell, and the exosomes is already pre-made. It's like a Tylenol,
Yeah.
a regenerative Tylenol.
But in stem cells, you're allowed to inject, right?
Not in the United States.
No. Okay.
Unless they're from you, you can inject them into a joint. That's all that's allowed orthopedically.
Okay, that's what I've heard about.
When you
Yes.
take, for instance, you can extract out bone marrow. Unfortunately, that is very, very small population of stem cells. You can extract out fat now. They're doing it now again. There was a case that was just won recently, and you can basically process it and put it back into a joint. Intravenously, you're not allowed to infuse any of the stuff because you're making a systemic change.
Unless it's your own.
Even if it's your own, you can't do an IV.
Okay.
You're making a systemic change. You're not allowed anything that makes a systemic change the FDA doesn't allow without proven clinical studies.
So there are places that are are injecting into joints, into inflamed areas, or intravenously, all over the country. It's kind of like the Wild West, and seems very shady to me. And certainly I'm just wondering what as a practitioner we should be doing in these circumstances. Do we wait? Because if we go back to our whole ideas of longevity, it takes a long time to determine whether anything helps the human body in terms of longevity, whereas they do tests on fruit flies and worms because they have a lifespan that's a whole lot less. So it seems like waiting for the real proof, the evidence-based medicine, is waiting longer than we want to as either providers or as patients. What do we do?
Yeah, and we have patients that travel. We have patients that go other places to do it.
Go to other countries and go other places.
They're all over the place. Yeah.
I mean, that's why we license our technology to Mexico, place in Cabo, place in Cancun. People are not going to wait, unfortunately. The difficulty comes with, number one, exactly what you just said is, they fruit flies, worms, even mice. I mean, I've worked on thousands of mice, and we are not mice. Less than 5% of anything that's found in a mouse ever translates into the human condition, even in the context of longevity, all of it. It's, unfortunately, we have to get into humans. We have to find, that's why now a lot of the companies, big pharma, a lot of the companies are going straight into what's called in vitro models. You grow up human cells in a petri dish, and then you test everything there versus testing it in a mouse model. It gives you a lot more answers. We know that it gives you a lot more answers. Unfortunately, the term longevity is still really not accepted, although it's out there massively, and the focus for everything is there's billions and billions of dollars put into longevity now. Anything from a supplement to a red light. I mean, you guys have seen it all.
Yeah.
Hyperbaric, all of it. I mean, different, there's so many things out there. Cold plunge. Yep, correct. I just did a cold plunge yesterday. I mean, start off with a workout, then after a workout, infrared sauna. After that, red light, which I think you might be able to see on my wall right behind me.
Yes.
And then after that, a cold plunge. It's, and it does make you feel great. And based on the way I feel, I don't know if it works or not, but
yeah,
based on my blood labs, it probably works. But I don't, I don't really know until something goes wrong. But keeping with the program, I've seen a lot of people have great results. It's hard. If for instance, we have a platform using a natural killer cell, and the context of it is looking at removing senescence. I don't know if you guys know what senescence is.
I have no idea. Please explain.
I know the word.
Yeah. So it's essentially in your body, the cells have three fates. The three fates are natural cell death, what we talked about earlier, 300 something billion a day are removed. That's called apoptosis. Secondarily is necrosis, when you have trauma, you bump your leg, whatever. A cell lysis, it just bursts. Lastly is aging. That's senescence. It's every cell in your body has only a finite amount of replications. So that wrinkle that you have on your face is possibility of a cell not producing the right amount of collagen, the plumpness from the fat now decreasing, the fat cell becoming senesced. It doesn't function correctly. We now know there's a direct correlation with these cells, these senescent cells, and they release similarly. These senescent cells, these age cells release exosomes, and those exosomes cause havoc. These are cells that fibrosis of the lung. So pulmonary fibrosis is a cell that no longer replicates, occupies space, causes havoc. Cirrhosis of the liver, a senescent cell. It's a zombie cell. This is the best terminology that everybody's using now. It's a zombie cell that all it does is just cause havoc. You can remove these. You have a particular cell in your body called the natural killer cell, and it's the first responder to a virus, to a mutated cell, cancer cell, and then to the senescent cell. The problem is as we age, so does every single cell in your body, so does that natural killer cell. We actually take these natural killer cells out of you, out of anybody, so that's called autologous. We replicate these cells, grow them up, and then throw them, IV them back into you. These are billions of these natural killer cells, not a small amount, billions. We put them back into you, and we published a paper in 2022 that we can eliminate senescence of the immune system. Why do we want to do that? Because it gives your immune system a stronger fighting chance to deal with the viruses, the mutated cells, all of it.
And that was in a study you did.
This was in a study we did. Yeah, we published.
So,
but the reason why we had this conversation, sorry to interrupt, is moving into the longevity sector. I wish I can say longevity. I wish I can go to the FDA and say I want to run a longevity study. No, and the study has to be on basically frail. We can say frailty disease, frailty on older individuals. We can say some form of bone issues on women, something like that. We can't just say, I'm going to target longevity and I'm going to go into this study. Right. There is no longevity studies now. You have to find a disease, which is the only one that's really accepted in what's considered longevity is frailty.
So, okay, so just after you just said all that, which is really interesting, what if you could see the future and maybe it's 50 years from now, what do you think, what do you project is going to be happening with exosome therapy? Like mainstream. Like, do you think it'll be mainstream medicine, longevity medicine?
I think cell therapies in general, the entire sector, which under that sector falls exosomes, is going to be mainstream. There's going to be many approvals. Large pharmaceuticals or other companies are going to have to, they're going to be forced by the public to get involved and to do them. The amount of, everything is going to be a lot more proactive versus being reactive. If you look at these full body scans now, they're phenomenal. And trust me, if you go get a full body scan and you find out something is heading to the right, to that trajectory, you're going to make a change. I mean, as simple as I don't understand how calcium scores are not approved and insurance doesn't even cover these things for heart issues.
Right.
Your calcium score is high. You got to start doing something. You got to control diet. There's, you got to put yourself on D and K2. There's other different things that are out there in the longevity space that you can actually do to slow down that progression. Otherwise, keep on eating whatever you're eating or doing whatever you're eating. You're going to have a massive heart attack and die, within who knows how long. These are simple tests. The full body scans are going to get cheaper and cheaper. They're really expensive now, but they're going to get cheaper and cheaper. It's going to have to be accepted at some juncture.
So do you think that like the description you just gave about how the cells in your face, they can't keep producing, so you keep getting that wrinkle, it keeps getting worse because your skin's basically aging. So do you think in the future, because I know we can't talk about injecting or anything like that because that's not what's happening right now, but in the future, do you think that that's going to be like real regenerative medicine? That's what it will be?
100%. I think there's going to be methods of injecting and causing some fat to proliferate to a certain point to cause the plumpness, because ultimately that's a lot of things. That's a lot that happens. Collagen, things that are going to stimulate your own collagen production, your own HA production, hyaluronic acid production, so you can maintain appearance and you won't look as, let's say you won't look as aged. That's one of the biggest, it's going to get there. I'm positive it's going to get there. There's a lot of good products that, are coming out. A lot of people are doing a lot of serious studies. The problem is the amount of money you need to go into these studies
Oh, yeah, I bet.
it's crazy
Yeah.
expensive. I mean, we're a company that it's a lot of money. It's expensive. The clinical studies are really expensive. And there's a worry out there because as a study such as a company just as ours, we use what's called an umbilical cord lining stem cell. We have a patent in it. But let's say the patent expires and it does expire in like 7 years. Then what? We've spent, $100 million to get this. Then here comes an off the shelf or something else that comes compete with us, a generic that competes with us, and they're allowed.
Yeah.
It's difficult. It's really, really difficult. That's one. Two is you can't really, they've taken a strong stance in the patent office on you can't patent something that's from you. So that's why you're still going to get all these different procedures being done no matter what. Unless it's an off the shelf, then you can patent specific processes of how you grew it up, why it's different, show factors of how it's different than anybody else's product. Then yes, but it's not easy. We're still in wild wild west.
Can I ask another question
Yeah,
and
of
then I'll
course.
okay. So Duncan sees a lot of people that have had, and maybe you don't know the answer to this, but they've had kind of botched surgical procedures, labiaplasty being one of them, and where the tissue has been rather destroyed. What do you think as far as exosomes being used on those tissues that are
It should
super
be
sensitive, painful,
Scarred.
it
scarred?
should help. It should help. Scarred, yeah, it should help. Um, but the problem is it depends how far along it is because if a keloid is formed, then you have to find some way to disrupt that keloid to form any because it's a physical barrier. Um, if there's specific scars, you can. The mucosal membrane is very regenerative, cells
Yeah.
turn over on a regular basis. It can be repaired. It's probably going to be the future of doing it, of fixing it. You definitely need an increase of blood, vasculature to the area because without that, there's no healing. That's what transpires as we age too. Capillaries, veins, arteries, all of it, arterioles, all of it becomes somewhat restricted, and then the correct oxygenation, the correct nutrients can't go to the vital areas that are needed to actually regenerate. So exosomes help with all of that if it's the right exosomes. Yeah.
And comparatively, how does one compare one batch of exosomes with another? I mean, in terms of the manufacturer, for instance, and maybe this is something that you don't want published or broadcasted, or maybe it's okay. I mean, how do we compare? We see salespeople frequently coming by the office,
All the time.
working for some company,
Yeah, or calling.
quoting numbers of billions of exosomes that are in their product and better than anybody else's, et cetera, et cetera. We, as a clinician, I have no way of knowing whether this is a reputable company or not, and I don't want, and they're expensive. So how do we in the trenches evaluate the quality of the product, other than trusting somebody like yourself?
Yeah. So ideally, number one is you look at, the product is only good as where it was derived from, where it came from. You look at the stem cell source. That's number
Right.
one.
Mm-hmm.
You'd want to see that stem cell source is produced correct and it has the right guidance cues or the right factors in it. The number of exosomes really does not really matter. And then that whole sector is actually flawed because the machine counts nanoparticles. And we've run actually controls on saline solution has 800 million exosomes in it, and it's just saline solution. So they're not exosomes. So a lot of the stuff is very flawed based on the color of the product, whether it's clear or not, because the machine is run with a laser. The laser refracts lights, counts particles. If it's a dark colored product or has any tint to it, it's going to register back a lot of feedback and you're going to have flawed counts. Ultimately, you look at what is inside the product is one. Two, how the product was produced. Um,
Do you mean the
better
source of the
products.
product there? The
What's
initial,
that?
do you mean the initial source of the product?
The initial source and the initial culture, how the cells were fed,
Mhm.
because that plays a key critical role in the age of the cells and what they, the secretome, what they secrete out, what exosomes are going to come out. Ultimately, it's about diet. We spend years studying. In 2014, studied diet with our stem cells and other types of stem cells to do comparatives to see that we found, we looked at how do we secrete out more high molecular weight HA? How do we secrete out more exosomes and then also keep an antimicrobial effect in it? And we did a lot of studies. We just looked at what are better cell sources, how they work. It's our focus is what is in the product, how the product was um, produced. For instance, standard, when you grow up cells, almost every media formulation, when you grow up cells, the food that you feed them is a high glucose formulation. That causes cells to turn over, to spew out a lot more stuff. But the cells age, they don't release the right factors. Our cells are in a sort of a keto type of environment, protein restricted, uh, ketogenic type, because well, they're not high fat, but they go into ketosis and it forces them to release out a lot more regenerative cues and maintain youth when we do that. So you have to look at the cell source. That's number one. Number two is you have to look at the testing. What type of testing? Not the number of exosomes. Show me how much, what protein is in there, because protein is function. Show me, because that's the only thing that causes a functional change in the body. Show me what factors are in there that are going to cause the effect that you're looking for. Does it cause, is it an anti-inflammatory effect? Is it an inflammatory effect? Do you want to increase blood flow? Show me those factors that are in there can help with this. Is it something that's going to help the appearance of skin by what is in there to do that? Is it something that's going to help increase my own collagen? Does it have collagen already? It's going to increase it. Is it going to possibly stimulate collagen? In the context of the vagina, I would look at something that has an antimicrobial in it, helps basically stimulate to cause some form of secretion in the area because as we age, it becomes dry, and then also helps control pH, helps the smooth muscle contract the right way because we now know as we age, the smooth muscle does not contract. That causes sexual dysfunction, causes pain in the area during sexual intercourse. These are the things that are probably, these are key. There's just, you have to ask questions. You have to ask those questions. Um, I'm I'm sure you're getting hit up with a bunch of different companies. You'll have these companies that have these amniotic fluid. Um, those products are completely different. If you look at, they obtain this from birth, post-birth.
Mhm.
There is, even these ground up umbilical cord tissue that they just grind up. They don't grow up any of the cells. Every single baby, every single one of us, three of us here are completely different. We have different genetic makeup. When we were during reproduction, when we were grown in the womb, when we're developing in the womb, the production is completely different, and we've tested this. So amniotic fluid, for instance, they extract amniotic fluid to tell you what's fantastic. It may be good, but one batch, which contains maybe 100 vials of it, is going to be completely different than another batch, then the other batch, then the other batch, then the other batch. You also have to be cautious with, in the back of the mind, where a lot of the naysayers say, genetics. Aren't you concerned about transferring genetics from one to another?
Mm-hmm.
There's a possibility of that, although it's very rare if it even happens at all. But there's a concern there. And there should be genetic testing, meaning karyotype testing. That's what we do. We test ourselves until they actually die, that finite amount of divisions. And we look at the chromosomes and test them on a regular basis to make sure there's no aberrations because we've had many cords that we've collected because we grow up a cell line, many cords that we've collected that come up with an aberration. We go back and we call mom, dad, say, hey, we found this genetic aberration. You need to test baby. You need to test yourself. 100% of the times there's an issue.
Wow.
So these are things that you have to be cautious of and be aware of.
In the topical application of exosomes, whether it be vaginally or otherwise topically to the exterior skin, what about, can you use any device to increase permeability of the skin, to get them deeper into the skin? And does that electrical current or whatever is being used for heating cause any damage to the exosomes itself or the function?
No, you can actually use something to permeate. So you use it prior to, and then you use the product after.
Okay.
Electrical stimulators are great. Anything electroporators, they're called electroporators, most of them.
Right.
Open up, cause channeling pores. Radio frequency is something that can work great too, to increase basically to help things permeate in and stay there. All these devices, I mean, there's a bunch of them that have 510K approvals
Yeah.
that are approved out there that you can use. Absolutely.
Microneedling too. Microneedling.
Microneedling, yep, that'll help. The microneedling, I would take a different approach. Normally, what we've done before and seen that it works well is actually treat prior, and then microneedle, and then treat again.
Yeah.
Okay.
What about lichen sclerosis?
It's a microbial and microbial nature, somewhat microbial nature, and if you have a product, once again, I go back down to the LL37. Look at something that can help with microbes, help with, once again, there's many different aspects of it. I'm not 100% familiar with lichen sclerosis, but you have to look at what caused that lesion, that scar. Is it microbial in nature? Is it not? We know, for instance, we've done some studies now in acne, and we've got the product that we have works fantastic. It's because it has a lot of it, majority of it, besides, unless it's in the teenage years, it's hormonal in nature. If a woman is on hormone therapy, then it can be hormone in nature too. But a lot of it, the scars and all that, are microbial in nature. And if you can resolve the scars by using a strong antimicrobial plus something that heals, it goes away. We have some great results with it. Just adding topically, and that's it.
And does that work for like eczema too, or like any type of skin, like inflammatory?
We haven't done anything with eczema. We have done patients with autoimmune disease for skin. We have done, and we've seen some clearing of skin. And these are, of course, in the context of clinical studies that we've actually done, but we have seen clearing of skin. But in eczema, I don't think we've treated anybody with eczema. I'm not 100% sure. I'd have to reach out to some of the dermatologists to see.
What about another big thing that comes through the office is hair loss?
We have a hair product. We actually have a specific hair product that's used a lot by a lot of the hair transplant guys. You can actually use it. Actually, we're doing a study right now with a specific device called the TED device.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, with that device, we're using that device to actually get it through. We have a 10-patient study at Dr. Alan Bauman's office in Florida, and we'll see how the results come out. But we've seen some phenomenal results, especially in women.
Is it
with
topical?
one treatment?
Oh,
You could, you can use it. You can use it. Well, you have to drive it in somehow.
okay.
So microneedle in, use like a electroporator device, something like that. It works really well.
So is it just like a cream that you go for a treatment, or do you take
a
it home and
solution.
use it nightly?
No, you would go to they do it in your office,
Okay.
and you would do a procedure similar to microneedling. You would add some in, then you would microneedle, then you would add some more. Going with that, or you would use a device similar to the TED. There's many of those out there.
Yeah.
To drive it into the scalp.
I forgot what TED is. What type of device is that? Is it electro?
It's an it's an electro. It's an electroporator type device. Also.
We have that other one.
But there's many of
we
those
do.
that open up
Right.
channel pores, open up, permeate, help the skin permeate.
Yes. Yeah, we've used one that we first came across about 5 5 to 8 years ago. Just topically, we're using that with PRP. So I've been looking at ways where we could get exosomes more deeply into the tissue. And so I've been thinking about using the electropermeator, the collagen we used to call it, because it was pushing collagen and increasing permeability of the skin to get that in there. I think that's, we're all trying to get it under the surface, so to speak, and not allowed to do it with needles at this point.
Yeah.
And actually, what's the crime there of injecting it? I mean, is it like any non-FDA approved treatment?
Non-FDA approved. You can't inject it.
Mm-hmm.
It hasn't gone through the studies to show efficacy, safety, efficacy, any of that.
Yeah.
That's the only issue with it.
Mm-hmm.
It's controlled.
Right. It's going to be really exciting to see how this goes on. I mean, I think your work is just amazing, exciting. Just really grateful of you giving some time to us today, and the phone calls that we've had before. It's been really helpful. And our phone calls, I hope, will continue where I'm asking questions when I can ask.
You got
off
it.
air.
I'm here to help. Just like I said on that statement, I'm passionate about what I do, and I love to help people. For me, it's sort of a challenge on sometimes. The harder the case, the more intrigued and the more I'll dig into research and find the problem. Well, find the solution to the problem and dig deeper on the cellular level of how do we solve that problem.
Yeah. Well, it's great. You always pick up the phone when our office calls you, so I appreciate that.
You got it. Thank you.
And you were easy for me to get a hold of to get you on today. We were really excited about it. So many questions every day about exosomes in the office. Really, it's.
I can imagine. Yeah. It's exploding. I went to the Vegas the Aesthetics World Conference in Las Vegas, and I had a specific talk in mind, just talking generally about exosomes, et cetera, type of thing. When I got there, there was like 14 vendors selling exosomes.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I was like,
surprised.
what is this? And I just last minute, I told my colleague I'm changing my entire talk and talking about why, how you vet out exosomes, what are you going to look for? Exactly what we spoke about today, because, I just like everybody was selling exosomes there and in powdered version, they don't show any science. And I'm so dedicated to trying to show the science of it to make sure you have a good product. We produce a good product. We're probably one of the only companies that do stability testing on this. Nobody just says that they'll throw exosomes in it in a cream and they'll tell you it's an exosome cream because it has exosomes in it, yet all that stuff is dead.
Yeah.
So that's not what we do. We look at stability studies to make sure there's an active ingredient in there, something that works.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really promising though at the conference you went to, because at the last conference we went to, there was nobody talking about exosomes.
Right.
Remember?
Right. Yeah.
It was rather taboo.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
there was a lot of people there talking about exosomes. I'm actually going to a hair one in Denver this week. It's considered the largest one. And we're going to talk about our hair product. We have some before and afters to show.
Is the hair product, so we could get the hair product from you?
Yes.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Jillian sent us the order forms, and we've got that all in process.
Okay, good.
So
Yeah.
we can
Yes.
get. I hadn't not been thinking of purchasing the hair product, but I think Allison will probably want to do that.
Get that.
So,
yeah.
quick question: in the product that I ordered from or through Jillian, it's a 1 ml multi-dose vial that's I think 50 billion count, and being a multi-dose vial, we were talking about dilution for application over larger areas and so on. What is a reasonable application or concentration for application on like just say vaginally, would it be better to have it diluted down? So 5 ml of, diluting down 1 ml of exosomes with normal saline, with 4 ml of normal saline, and then using that, or using the more concentrated version. What do you think?
If you're going to do, I personally think if you're going to do multiple sprayings or multiple applications to one area, you'd want to dilute it down, which is very, very common in the aesthetic sector. Normally for instance, that sprayer I was telling you about, it's like a gun.
Yeah.
It has a cap on the top, and then you basically put, they'll put like 1 ml in, and then they'll dilute it with saline, and it gives them more sprays.
Yeah.
So in the context of microneedling, they'll do a spray, let it dry. It takes 10, 20 seconds to dry. It dries, then they'll microneedle it, then they'll do another pass. Then sometimes they're going to do another pass later on, they'll spray. So it gives the opportunity to do multiple passages on the spraying. And the great thing about it is when you do these type of procedures, these procedures sort of, sometimes they irritate, they burn a little bit. It gives it a cooling effect with that spray gun too. And it cools it down, and people don't leave all like, well, I'm irritated, my skin's irritated, it burns.
Yeah.
It feels good. So I would dilute it just as much as you think space-wise. I mean, there's not that much space in the vagina, so, versus the entire face.
Yeah.
A couple of mLs.
Yeah.
And it gives you multiple passes with it.
Right.
And then just use all the product. Yeah.
Yeah. Great.
And just to clarify, you can use the RF and with
radio frequency?
Yeah.
Yes, but I would do it first, then you do radio frequency, then wait a little bit to do again.
Okay.
Do you mean minutes or days?
I would tell you, no, not days. I would say minutes.
Okay.
Wait minutes because you're going to get an inflammatory response. Then once you spray, you're going to suppress that. And we have a pretty neat study coming out soon. We have some evidence already. We have a pig study we did, pig skin study with the University of Miami. It should be coming out soon. We'll get you some data on that so you can actually see the effects of what it does. We did it in microneedling and in radio frequency.
Okay. So the heat doesn't destroy anything.
No, because you're not directly hitting the exosome with the heat. Remember, you're going to apply first, let it settle in to prep the area. Then you're going to do the radio frequency, the heat.
And then put it over.
You have an effect already once you put it in, somewhat of an effect once you put it in. You're going to wait a little bit, then wait a couple minutes, and then apply again.
Okay.
There's one of the microneedling devices, Potenza, has what's called an infusion tip. So it kind of can push some fluid medication into the skin at the same time as the microneedling is, or with the microneedling. So if you had exosomes and you were using them with an infusion tip, would that be contrary to FDA approval because you've got microneedling? Or would it be just the question be, or the problem be, that it's applying heat to the exosome then because it's being done at the same time?
Well, I don't think fusion tip has RF. It's just.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
That's just fluid. As long as, if the product has a 510K approval, it should be fine.
Yeah. Okay.
If there's a device approval for it, then it should be fine.
Yeah. Thanks.
Perfect. You got it.
Excited.
Thanks. You guys have a great day.
Get better.
Look at we ended at perfect time, 11:11.
Okay.
Right.
Yes.
Well, thanks for listening. We're getting really good feedback. We'd really appreciate a review on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you're listening. Thank you. You can always DM the Vagina Doctor Instagram with any questions or topics you'd like to learn more about, or email us. The Vagina Doctor Podcast. It all starts here.